Omaha's restaurant scene has come a long way recently, and my three guests tonight are, I think, some of the main reasons why we've seen such a jump. They have really helped shepherd Omaha from what was a solid restaurant scene into one that I think is just exploding and getting better and better all the time. Can we please give a very warm welcome to Paul Kulik, Jenny Coco, and Glenn Wheeler. Omaha, welcome into another episode of Restaurant Hoppen. I'm your host, Dan Hoppen, and Omaha is a special city for restaurants, and we just have such a wide array of cuisines and just different styles of food that you can have. We've got James Beard nominated chefs, we've got James Beard nominated restaurants. That was not always the case. Omaha's restaurant scene has come a long way recently, and my three guests tonight are, I think, some of the main reasons why we've seen such a jump. They have really helped shepherd Omaha from what was a solid restaurant scene into one that I think is just exploding and getting better and better all the time. Can we please give a very warm welcome to Paul Kulik, Jenny Coco, and Glenn Wheeler. All right, chefs, just to start, I would love for you to just give a quick introduction. Introduce yourself, who you are, where you're working now, and maybe just give a quick, 45-second to a minute synopsis of your career. Paul, let's start with you.
Okay, so my name is Paul Kulik. Currently, you can find me at Le Bouillon, which is a restaurant that's located in the former French Cafe space in the Old Market. We also have Howard Street Wine Merchant, which is our attending wine shop. And then we open a little wine bar downstairs called Mon Cave. That's where I'm at now. I've been a part of a number of restaurants, pretty much all downtown. Although I did open Amsterdam Falafel and Kebab with some friends some years ago. Via Farina, Boiler Room, ran La Bouvette for a number of years. And so that's been my sort of CV.
Jenny?
Jenny Coco. I originally started at the baking company many years ago, and have just progressed through the restaurant scene, V Mertz, the Flatiron Cafe for a number of years, and then opened my own spot at 52nd and Leavenworth, and now I'm at the Linden House, which is 132nd and Dodge.
Hello, everybody. I'm Glenn Wheeler. I'm currently at Spencer's for Steaks and Chops, downtown Omaha, where I've been for April will be 16 years. It's a long time in restaurant business. But before that, I was way back in the day when I first moved to town, I was the chef at Maxine's old restaurant. Used to be at the top of the Red Lion Hotel downtown. Maxine's, and then from there I went to what did I do? Oh, I went to Omaha Prime, first Prime steakhouse in the state of Nebraska at the time. We did Omaha Prime, and then same owner, we did Passport Restaurant, where Chibo Vino is now. Did that space, and then we went to Dundee and did Wheelers, or Bombardier, then Wheelers. After that, I was at the Hilton at Liberty Tavern for about 5 years, and then I've been at Spencer's for the last 16. So that's my 30-year career in a nutshell in Omaha, Nebraska.
It's a very difficult thing to ask people to sum up your entire career in a minute. You guys did a great job. Just thinking about the state of Omaha's restaurant scene, I really kind of started getting into all of this and really trying to highlight local restaurants in about 2015. And even thinking back just that decade, like how far we've come and the number of restaurants we've added, the number of different cuisines that have popped up in Omaha, the amount of which the James Beard nominations have just started to skyrocket every year, where it's like, usually Omaha's getting 2 or 3. It's weird if we only get 0 or 1. When you guys look at the last 15 to 20 years of Omaha's restaurant scene, how do you think it's evolved the most?
I mean, it's like a completely different place. And I mean, in a lot of different dimensions. I mean, I can say that, like from the restaurateur perspective, it's great because there's a lot more, I think the public has evolved a ton, and you see a lot more openness to, to trusting the restaurant to do what the restaurant intends to do. There's more good faith in that regard. I think that wasn't the case 20 years ago. There was a lot more reticence and maybe a little bit more resistance. I kind of think of it as like, in just broad strokes, I think there was a pretty long period, you guys can maybe tell me if this is right or wrong, where fine dining, which is to say culture dining or kind of white tablecloth dining, was mostly dominated by a country club kind of atmosphere and members, and then that expectation translated to what restaurants had to follow. So in other words, the clubs kind of ran the show and restaurants kind of followed them behind. And I think one of the transformations is now you're allowed to have a restaurant do what the restaurant does with kind of full trust in the personalities involved, the cuisine, the concept, and that kind of thing. And that, I think, allows for a whole different range of stuff that didn't exist 20 years ago.
Absolutely. Just the creativity of chefs, cooks, everybody on the line participating more and being more creative has definitely flipped the tables in the last 20, 25 years, where, like you said, that people are trusting more and allowing us to be more creative, more little out of the box than what we had originally started with when I believe all 3 of us got into the business. It was pretty basic stuff. And once we started rolling with ingredients because we could finally get them here, that took a lot. Omaha was a hard time to get purveyors to bring stuff in, grocery stores, local markets. You couldn't find, for the life of me, I couldn't find a fresh mango for forever.
Think about how much online sourcing there is too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now the access you have.
Now you can.
Yeah. Whereas that wasn't available.
You drop ship fish directly from a dock. You know what I mean? That's just not a thing that existed 20 years ago.
No.
For sure. So.
Yeah, I totally agree with what both of them said. Especially, the ingredient part. I mean, there's times, because I did some like bombadilla and stuff like that, we couldn't get stuff that I wanted at that time. Like, comes to mind ají amarillo. It's a yellow Peruvian pepper. And I could tell you a quick story too about when we opened up bombadilla and we had ceviche on the menu. Well, it was like the Board of Health never heard of ceviche before. So they come in and they tell me, they were like, well, we don't know what we're going to do with this. You can't serve fish, that's not been cooked. And I'm like, they've been doing ceviche for thousands of years. It's a preservation method. So finally, I think a week or 2 went by and they come back to me and they said, well, here's what we're going to do. The sushi restaurants that are here, and there was only a couple back then at the time, they have to abide by this. They give me this paper that says that you freeze all your fish to a certain degree below 0, and it has to be frozen for so-and-so, then you can thaw it out, and then you can serve it raw. And I said, oh, yeah? I said, they signed this? And they said, yeah, they've all had to sign this, and they abide by this. And I said, okay. I said, give me the paper, I'll sign it. And I signed it and never abided by it. It was crazy.
And thus Omaha discovered ceviche.
And then ceviche was what nowadays you got to deal with a lot of other, Paul knows, with a lot of other stuff if you want to do sous vide and charcuterie. That's a big issue. Sure. And like 10 years ago, it really was a big issue when people started doing their own charcuterie boiler room and stuff. But another thing, too, I think that helped Omaha evolve is some of the underlings that may have worked for us or what have you, worked for different chefs. And then a lot of them went off to California and different places and worked under some really big name chefs, like Thomas Keller and stuff. And then they came back. And when they came back, then they kind of spread their wings and, brought a lot of stuff back with them, and a lot of knowledge and a lot of technical know-how.
Sure.
So I think that's another big thing that kind of helped, things evolve.
Because no one person makes a restaurant. It absolutely requires not just the team, but it requires you've got to get all these other people on board. You've got to get the health department to sort of see, hey, we're taking this seriously. Safety is a priority, but we want to do something maybe a little differently. You've got to get diners to sort of buy in that you're not trying to rob them, you're not trying to fool them or psych them into eating something gross. You want them to have a great experience. You need to have a front of the house staff that's knowledgeable and willing to invest their time, their effort, their money into understanding how important pairings are and how important service is and hospitality. So it's like this whole group, and that's just one entity. And obviously, everybody knows a restaurant's half-life is super fast. So, you're losing staff. Every day is a brand new. Every day is literally every day is a brand new adventure. So every day you're encountering, something that's going to try to tear you away from the plan that you had going into the day, let alone the plan you have for the long term, what you're trying to accomplish. And that means you have to not just have what you have to have the backup, and the backup to the backup all makes sense. So, you know what I mean? There's so many different pieces that go into that. Mm-hmm. So
I have so many follow-up questions based off what you guys just said. Those are such good answers. I'm going to start with what you said, Glenn, and you talked about how a lot of young cooks and chefs felt like they needed to go to the big cities, the Chicagos, the New Yorks, the LAs, the New Orleans, what have you. Mm-hmm. But then they came back. I think that's really important because they were getting exposed to different things and bringing that knowledge back. But there also had to be a reason for them to come back. And part of that reason is chefs like you guys, in that you had established something in Omaha. Maybe we didn't know what it was yet, but there was starting to be, Jenny, you were garnering some Jenny and Paul James Beard nominations, and these restaurants were starting to be recognized as, hey, we don't have to go to the big cities to potentially have an amazing career in cooking. I'm curious, why did you guys stay? Why did you stay here in Omaha and plant your roots versus, I don't know if you stodged around the country or maybe took some brief stints, but for the most part, you guys have laid down roots in Omaha. Why?
Personally, I spent a summer out in Lake Tahoe, and that was enough for me. I mean, enough people from the Bay Area and such, and I just, I didn't know if I wanted to cook for the rest of my life. I wasn't sure. So I came home, finished my education, and it just felt right to me. So I stayed. Mm. And then I've had the pleasure of working with lots of people from all over the world that have come through my kitchens, and they have taught me more than I would probably have learned if I would try and travel around. Mm-hmm. They're imparting their knowledge onto me, and I'm giving it back to what I know, and so we've just had a good marriage. So shall we say that, it felt right. Mm-hmm. And I've got all my family here, so that's major.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah, so with me, I had worked in Chicago area and New Orleans before I came to Omaha, and I never had planned. And I'm born in L.A. So I moved my mom out here in '94 because my brother was here, and I really had no intention on staying at first, but decided to go out and kind of shop around for jobs and stuff to see, and then one thing led to another, and my first job that I had was for Paul Bronschweller, which is in her space where she is now. It was Spana on 132nd and Dodge. So that was the first place. And I just really caught, Paul was great. I'd never worked for a chef like Paul at the time. He was European trained and, very strict, if you want to put it that way, and very, very precise in everything that he did. And we were, he'd go out and shop for vegetables each day to garnish the plates with, and we had herb garden in the back. Kind of got the bug from that. But and then, in all honesty, to answer the question why I stayed, and because one thing led to another. So after that, I went to Maxine's. I ended up getting some really positive reviews from back then. Jim Delmont, I believe it was. Yeah, it had to be Jim Delmont was the food reviewer for the World Herald. Mm-hmm. And kind of one thing led to another, and I just kept building my career here. So I ended up staying. Now, I have staged other places on short stages during this time. Anytime I can go and learn something, I'm always up for it. Not so much nowadays, but in the past.
I had a moment when, I've been working. I also didn't know that restaurants were going to be my path. I remember the first time I worked on the line, and I was like, I'm in love with this, but I don't know how it's going to fit in the rest of my life. I didn't have a plan, but I didn't see, I didn't come from restaurant people or anything. And then, I moved to DC, and I was trying to, figure out what career path to go. And I ended up finding a really delightful restaurant, was sous chef for this place in Capitol Hill. And it just all kind of clicked and made sense, but I was terribly homesick. And I was thinking, man, wouldn't it be great? And I had worked at La Bouvette. I don't know if you guys are familiar, on 11th Street. And way overambitious little cafe. And I don't know, I felt like, well, it'd be kind of fun to maybe have the liberty and freedom to do something back home. These big cities are great to learn from, but it's very hard to contribute to. The economics are just dreadful. And so then I moved back, returned to Bouvette, and then was able to kind of transform the program there. And then from that point, it was just like, let's go. Working with Mark and Vera Mercer at the time, having their backing to do something in this little place. And I think in that time frame, that was kind of like a particularly challenging moment in restaurants, because there was like a period where things were like really stuck, and kind of before things kind of had to move into the new sort of, I think, very creative period. And so then it was like, yeah, let's have fun. We can kind of do whatever we want here. And that's probably what kept me here.
What do you mean by things were stuck?
Well, to piggyback kind of what you're saying, there's creatively stuck. There are these expectations. If you go to a car lot, you're going to go buy a car. You do kind of a little bit of research ahead of time, like, I think I'm going to go buy a Ford. You go to a Ford dealership. You don't go to a Mazda dealership. You go to a Ford dealership. If you go to a Ford dealership and ask for a Mazda, what's the problem there? You went to the wrong dealership. Mm-hmm. And so the dilemma, I think, was that there are a lot of Mazda dealerships and not enough Ford dealerships in this metaphor that I'm beating to death. Or, you know what I mean? There was like, it's kind of hard to, well, wait, no, this is what a car looks, you know what I mean? And so, you know, just the economics of restaurants being as dreadful as they are anyway, let alone, you know, as things get more expensive, whatever, you know, you just don't have the luxury, the latitude, the freedom, the whatever, the space to do what you want to do. You know, it takes a very special constitution to endure the kind of, you know, patience that it takes to do that, right?
I mean, think about it. What was downtown when we were all starting?
So you had V-Mertz, but V-Mertz kind of, you know, V-Mertz was like pork chops with mango salsa. It was like fine, but it was like giant sort of things, and sort of that was the sort of
M's,
but M's was not like M's is M's, you know, like institution. You had.
I think it took M's. You could see the turn at M's. I mean, you're right. M's was still M's, and it still is to this day. But at least with the specials thing, when Doug Case and Sandy were, you know, co-executive chefs, when they started doing their daily menus, that's like the first real creativity I saw in Omaha, and that would have been, you know, in 95.
That's probably about right. And there were a couple of others. There was, I think, Cafe de Copia was in the old market. It was downtown for a little bit, and then obviously French Cafe, and you had Bistro at the Market, which is one of the places that I started out at. I worked there for a number of years.
Bistro.
Yeah, and so, but it was like kind of all the same stuff.
Yeah.
Like it was creative, but it was like, because the cooks would all go kind of like, I got fired from this place, I walk across the street, I start working at the next place. Yeah. And so it's like, well, so-and-so does the salmon this way. It's like, okay, we're going to do the salmon this way. And so, you know, you just had a lot of the same kind of stuff. And then pretty much everybody ages to a level, you know, you kind of get into your 30s and you're like, restaurant life is impossible. It's totally incompatible with normal life. So where do I go? It's like, well, you go work for a larger institution. And then that's where, you know, not Field Club necessarily, but Omaha Country Club and Happy Hollow, and they hired a number of people, and Lionel was there, you know, to help, like, you know, make people feel comfortable and that they, you know, didn't lose all of their credibility going to work at a country club.
Well, and then Metro really took a jump
Huge.
into the.
Oh yeah. Somewhere along the line, I don't know the year. I'm not going to even try to think about that, but Metro really turned into, you know, they made a big turn and jump to the good side. Not to the good side.
Well, yeah.
No, they leveled up.
They leveled up.
They
leveled up big time.
The expectations were that, you know, you had a bunch of energy for, you know, would-be cooks, people who were just super curious. Metro facilitated that. Brian O'Malley facilitated that enormously. But they're like, it's interesting how in the evolution of restaurants, I kind of think about, you know, what Bombadilla was doing at 50th and Underwood in, I guess it was 2000. Is that what it was?
Yeah. We started December of 99. So
makes 100% sense at 50th and Underwood in 2026. 100% sense. But faced a whole different set of challenges in 2000.
Right.
You know, and I think then there are a couple of others. I think, you know, what was it was Mark's. Remember Mark's?
Oh, yeah.
Kind of also
Where Udall Ali is now.
No, not Mark's. It was Mark. What's his name? Who was in your space in the Bombadilla space?
Oh yeah. I don't remember what it was called. Mark Oswald.
Yeah, he had a place there.
Yeah.
And he
What
also
they called it.
Yeah, he also kind of was trying to be really ambitious. And Paul Urban had his place.
Yeah.
You know, it really was like super ambitious, and like it just couldn't beat the inertia, you know? And so that's what I mean by stuck. There was like expectation about what you're supposed to have when you dine. And then you had to get over this hurdle to then win the trust of the diner, win the trust of the food critic, have food critics who are actually interested in going out to eat and, you know, passionate about the subject and you know, eager to tell everybody about it. So that was part of the ecosystem that was maybe missing for a couple of years.
And I think travel too helped. I think travel, when I said the younger guys went off, but still when we went off, I've known Paul for a long time. Actually, Paul was very into photography when I
that's
first.
true.
He was into photography big time.
That was a big fork in my road. It's like,
So,
go that route.
yeah. But anyhow, when we started traveling, when we started going to San Francisco and New York and, Chicago, when Chicago started booming and New Orleans and these different places, what we saw and we brought back, because there was, I remember a trip we took with there was about 6 chefs. We all went out with Jim Olson. He's a purveyor here in town of specialty foods. We went out to San Francisco. Me, Jeff Snow, John Haddam, some other people. We all went out there. We saw stuff out there that Omaha wasn't doing anything like that. Mm-hmm. And if they were, it was in a club,
like a special dinner kind of thing.
Special dinner.
That could afford it.
Stuff like that. So, me and Jeff, I remember we came back and we were like, we got to get some veal cheeks. So then you're trying to find this stuff around here. Like, who's got veal cheeks? We're like, we had sauteed veal cheeks in San Francisco. Yeah. We come back, we want to serve sauteed veal cheeks. But then it was the sourcing problem. So that one, goes right into better sourcing and stuff. Yeah. And nowadays you can get anything you want.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, you can get A5 from Japan. You can get anything you want, really. I mean, for the most part.
Sorry, go ahead, Paul.
Well, I was just going to also say, there was a revolution in the kind of the green farmers and the people who wanted to grow for restaurants. Because I remember right before Boiler Room, we were, I was so ideological, and we were going to make this place. It was going to be, rigidly, sourced and go to the farmers markets, and they'd be like, "What do you want to do? What you're going to buy from me? Like a restaurant?" And it just didn't compute, that was a thing that you would do. You didn't just have this tent that you went to on the weekends or whatever for special occasions. It was a thing that there needed to be consistency of product. And then there was all these cool producers.
The farmers and the producers had a huge deal. They had a lot to do with it. Mm-hmm. Because, like Paul said, I remember going to the farmer's market. You saw more flowers than anything, or people selling this, that, and another. And there was nothing like nowadays when you go. Mm-hmm. Or when you have farmers that, sell to you, the restaurants that they have all kinds of stuff. And they'll plant whatever you want to. I mean, if you,
that's exactly
you work with them.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
You work with them and get the relationship going with them.
Do you remember Ann Trumbull? Did you ever meet her? Mm-hmm. Remember how she did that?
Yeah.
She had that emerging terrain. Do you ever hear about this? So she had this kind of nonprofit that was trying to connect. And she ended up trying to do different land use ideas. And one of her first projects was this farm table dinner that was at the base of the grain elevators over on, the 480 exchange.
Wasn't that with Clayton?
Well, there were 6 of us. There were a bunch of us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there were a bunch of us, and so, but it was 500 or 600 people. It was October, and the weather held. It was a beautiful day, and 100% of the products needed to be sourced locally. And so, part of their job was to connect the growers with the various chefs. And I swear that was to me, that was the first moment where you really had this opportunity to get all these new producers realize oh no, there's a market demand for that. And so they started knocking on restaurant doors, and you're like, oh, this is awesome. So that was a big turning point.
Yeah.
So we've listed several potential factors why there was a shift. There was, chefs going out and getting different experience and then coming back. There was Metro leveling its game up. There's access to ingredients. There's farmers stepping up and realizing that they can source restaurants. But there also had to be chefs that were bold enough to say, nobody in Omaha has had veal cheeks. I want to try and put this on my menu. That's bold to do that, because you don't know if they're going to respond, or do you know that this probably isn't going to go well, but damn it, I want to try it because this is delicious and I want people to experience this. You guys were some of the people who started to push the envelope a little bit and ask your guests to step a little bit outside their comfort zone, a little bit more and more and more. What gave you the boldness to try and push Omaha's cuisine forward.
Can I just say a real quick? So the French Cafe, I worked at the French Cafe for a moment, and they sold veal cheeks on the menu, but they were terrified of calling them veal cheeks, so they called them veal morsels.
Yep.
That sounds
Veal
so
morsels.
much worse.
Which is so bad.
Yeah,
Anyway.
veal morsels. He's absolutely correct.
Oh my God.
I remember Jeff telling me, he's like, "Yeah, man, can't call them cheeks. We gotta call them morsels." And
I mean,
but Bombadilla was a big breaking point, I think, for me. I mean, we had this vision, you know, with Nuevo Latino cuisine. It hit in New York and a little bit in Chicago. I went and staged with a chef named John Mannion at Moss in Chicago, which he has 3 or 4 restaurants now. None of them are Nuevo Latino, but anyhow. But Douglas Rodriguez did Patria, which was all the craze in New York. So going there, working with him, seeing that kind of stuff kind of gave us the vision. And then it was just like, okay, the more you study and get into things, it's like, okay, let the creativity. And then it's getting the product, of course. But yeah, I mean, back then I introduced a lot of things. Escalar was
But what made you
not even around.
What made you take the jump from where you were, comfortable situation, steady paycheck, to like opening your own place called Bombadilla? Like what was? Because I mean, I feel like that was a completely different. You know, that was such a different market, and I know why. You know, for me, Boiler Room was like a very unique story that I don't think is reproducible. But I'm super curious how that happened for you.
Well, I mean, it wasn't. First of all, it wasn't. I mean, it wasn't. Bombadilla wasn't my. You know, I mean, we worked for the Jam Rosie. I was, executive chef.
Okay.
But they did let me, have free reign. We had come up with the concept basically, and Nuevo Latino was basically using Latin ingredients, however you want to. I mean, so it was up to me in, my mind what to do with, some stuff. And then when I started, traveling and stuff like that and seeing tasting menus, and I kind of came back and did spontaneous tasting menus and stuff, just working with like off the cuff. It was just a challenge. We're going to do. I see some people in here that experienced some of those those menus back in the day. Yeah, it was fun though. But it was just letting the creativity go and studying a lot of reading back then, because you didn't have the internet like you have nowadays. Nowadays, I mean, you got instant access to just about anything. Back then, it was a lot of reading.
Reading, and you have to actually travel. You'd have to actually go to the place, and you had to actually taste the stuff. And but part of you has to be
buy an actual book.
Go to the bookstore. Go like, do I like this one or that one? Yeah. But you do have to be kind of myopic. You kind of have to sort of be so deluded into the belief in what you're trying to do, and you have to convince the people in your life that makes sense. Your partner, spouses, whatever. You gotta, it's maybe it doesn't make sense actually, and this is, I think, the tricky thing, because I think the restaurant's populated with people who are sort of on the margins of sane anyway, and so sometimes you got 1 foot over the edge, and sometimes you got 2 feet over the edge. But so to your point about the bold, you kind of just, you don't even think about it. You just go, this is important. This needs to happen. So you do it, and you hope it works.
I think a big part of what started to make that shift too was Omaha started getting national recognition. For those who don't know, the James Beard Awards are basically like the Emmys or the Grammys or whatever major award you may name for the food world. And Jenny, you were the first Omaha chef to be nominated back in 2008 when you were at the Flatiron Cafe. Then you were nominated again in 2009, 2010, 2011. What was it like for you to be like now Omaha's getting a couple nominations a year, but none at that time. What was it like for you to get that call and like be the one who kind of got that ball rolling?
Completely clueless. I was. I had no idea what it was.
Really?
Seriously. It was people from around the country calling me, do you need morels? I've got some morels out of Oregon right now. And I'm like, wait a minute. It's only March. What do you know? Or, I've got this, I've got that. And I'm like, how did you find me? And they're like, well, you've been nominated. And I'm like,
they didn't even tell you?
No.
What are we doing?
No. I had no idea. And then they flew me out, and I presented food for the after event after the ceremony because the focus was women. So I don't know. It was right place, right time. I just showed up on the scene, I guess. And I was speaking with a food critic from Baltimore. And I said, I think I'm in the wrong place. And she goes, no, you are not. Enjoy it. Take it all in. Own it. And just, be proud of yourself. And that flipped my head all together. Being up in New York City, I can't tell you all the amazing chefs I met. I'm sitting there at Daniel Boulud's place at the after party, and, we're all just sitting around toasting each other and Ming Tsai and, all these wonderful chefs that I'd only just read about, and now here I am rubbing elbows with them. So that was pretty eye-opening for a young woman out of Omaha, Nebraska.
And then they just kept bringing you back.
It was, like I said, right place, right time. The Flatiron had really modified their techniques and their service, their wine list, and then I was able to pair the food properly, and so it just all clicked. Mm-hmm. And that's what it takes. It just all has to, from the second these anonymous people walk in the door to the second they leave, you don't know who they are, but everything has to be spot on. And that's why I haven't had another nomination.
But it's hard.
Since I left the Flatiron.
It's very hard, but that's a good point. It's hard to do. I mean, for a best
I'll be honest.
For a best chef Midwest, they're pulling 10 restaurants from essentially 10 states across the Midwest, and to get represented is very difficult, especially to break through. I mean, now Yoshitomo and the Boiler Room are pretty frequently getting on there, but and that's well deserved. But they've been recognized, so it's easier for them to get on there again. Mm-hmm. What's more difficult is to get on there for the first time, and there's some congratulations due here because Le Bouillon was just nominated in this recent cycle as a semifinalist for the Outstanding Wine and Other Beverages program. Yeah. So congratulations on that, Paul.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Let's applaud that.
Thank you. That's it. I mean, it's interesting because I think I got a semifinalist back in the day at Boiler Room.
2012.
Was it 12?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that many people in town kind of even were aware of what the James Beard Award was. I mean, there were kind of a narrow sort of segment. I think that's really grown. I think that so Dave Utterback has been a finalist, which is huge. That means
Tim
Tim
Nicholson.
So Tim first, so Tim first from Boiler Room, and then Dave, and both of them, sitting, there waiting to hear like the actual, like, that's so cool. And I don't think you can understate or overstate just how hard it is to get to that level. That's like such an enormous accomplishment. So yeah, it's pretty great. And, I think when you probably talk to people who are successful in that level, they kind of understand that success breeds success. So it's a little bit, that path, it gets a little bit more trod. And so other people can follow in those footsteps a little easy. I saw that, I can't remember his name, but the guy from Casa Bovina got
Zach Midget.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, that's a long time coming because that restaurant is like 100% like in the wheelhouse for that. And I think that, there are places that I think, maybe get a little overlooked. And when they finally do, you're like, okay, let's see if this maybe kind of keeps happening, year over year. The beverage thing is great because it's a culmination of probably the last 20 years of work on my own to kind of foster that among the front of the house staff, that everybody kind of has takes that same subject seriously. It's not just, it's not upselling. It's not like wine is like pretense. It's, having an understanding of what's trying to happen there. Wine is probably the more interesting subject for me than like say cocktails or whatever. But, so yeah, it's super cool. But when it happened, it totally blindsided me. I did not see that, not see it coming.
Now, obviously, national recognition isn't everything, and like you guys have said, especially back then and even now, there's a great portion of the city that probably has no idea what the Beard Awards are or what it means to be nominated, what it means to be a finalist. But for you guys who are in the industry, to start to see Omaha get recognized for these national awards, and it's like, oh, something's happening here. As you're pushing the boundaries and you're feeling some pushback, but also starting to get the wheels unstuck and people are starting to be a little bit more adventurous. What was it like for you guys? Uh-oh. Are we all right? Okay.
Yeah.
What was it like
My
for...
Bigfoot.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good. Mm-hmm. What was it like for you guys to kind of get that, what's the word I'm looking for? Just get that positive reinforcement that, hey, we are being bold, we're trying new things, and it's paying off here.
For me, it opened doors. It legitimized what we were doing and why we're doing it, and it's a motivator also. We're not just sitting in, the middle of the U.S. and nobody notices us. We're going to make a difference. It's got to start somewhere. So happy to be a part of that beginning.
Mm-hmm. It's cool how it also inspires the whole staff too. Like when it happens, everyone's like, "Oh yeah, this is pretty sweet." That that you're not inconspicuous. You're not kind of toiling away in the dark. That there's actually people paying attention. So yeah, everyone gets a little bit like of a lift out of the whole deal.
Mm-hmm. When you guys look at the Omaha culinary scene now, who do you think are some of the chefs or even the cooks that have next? Who are some of the rising stars that you think are going to be, I'm not going to say on the level of a Tim Nicholson or a Dave Utterback because they've set a very, very high standard, but in that conversation of, hey, you better take notice of this guy or gal because they're doing some really special things.
Man, they're, yeah.
I mean, you said Tim. I mean, there's, Kane Atkinson.
Kane Atkinson, yep.
Definitely. Kane's phenomenal.
Yeah, I think there's tons of people. Part of it is to get the, you got to get from working in the sort of, how do I say this? We all know, there are people that I think we all know that are working out there. You're like, oh yeah, watch that person. That person's going to go far. There's still a ton of interest in plying your trade outside of Omaha. So there's still, for young up-and-coming chefs, there's still the dream to go, work in the big markets where there truly is a level of attention that is an order or two magnitude greater than
sure.
here. And levels of service and access to things that are just still kind of like Oz, like a whole different universe. But for for like the long kind of path, I want to see, there's probably 3 or 4 people I think that are working. I don't know what to say because I feel like they're so crucial to the places that they work at. They want to be like, but Dave.
If you don't want to name names, you don't have
just
to.
Dave cultivates a ton of people. Tim cultivates a lot of people. I think all of us have had
Benny Mays.
Yeah, obviously huge.
Benny Mays.
What he's doing, at Ocaran is great. Yeah. But so it's like the whole team has something to offer because none of those places are possible without like a whole team of dedicated people.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like I can't stress that enough.
You guys mentioned how important the rise of Metro Community College and their culinary program was, and it's been recognized as one of the better ones out there. When did you see that shift? What does that program offer that makes it special and that started to really elevate the level of cooks and chefs that were coming out of that program?
I taught there for a little while.
Well, then it was obviously the teaching.
It was but it was before the new building. So the new building made a huge difference.
The new building made a huge difference.
But there was a woman that had left Omaha. She'd gone out to New York to the culinary school and then returned to Omaha. I can't think of her name. But she really had a big push to elevate the program here.
Yeah, and I think Brian played a huge role.
Oh,
Brian O'Malley.
yes.
Yeah, because
the dedication.
Yeah, just that he's got that infectious kind of passion.
He cares.
So you kind of, and then he had this like total constellation of people who were just, agog. They were just all about kind of this just the school and then there's a number of faculty too that are really high quality. The bistro stack that's very, I think that's a number of classes that you take near the end of your curriculum where there's an operating bistro up there. I'm probably went up there, and so there are kids who have to, for the first time ever, they're working in a white tablecloth dining environment, and that's such a cool exposure for a lot of those kids. And in the old building, which is the old administrative building, we would try to do a bistro. Did you guys do anything up at the school? So it was kind of like
way back,
but it was like between two ferns, Yeah, it was like two plastic plants, and then the kids are trying to eat.
We went.
Oh man!
I think me and Jim Olson and Leonel, I know, was with us. I don't know who else was with us at that old school, and we went and ate. They did a little special dinner for us, I think. But yeah, the ferns, and there was the plastic.
Yeah.
And I was like, when they built the school, I was like, man, this is unbelievable.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's just a palace.
I remembered the old place.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, so that played a huge role. And I know that they had, I do think that kind of that period, what is it, like 10, 11, 12, 13, somewhere in that era, there was just like, there was a generational change. I think there was the school that became a reasonable alternative for, a trade. I think there was tons of passion about food across the country, and I think that trickled down into Omaha. I think there was enough of an infrastructure with like local places that were aspirational, so that it wasn't just, me alone reading the Marco Pure White book. There were people that you got to other people that you got to work with and do cool things with. And, it just kind of hit that critical mass. And, I think like everything, it matured. It was very juvenile, at the time. It was just filled with this like youthful exuberance and ambition. And now maybe some of the realities of what the life is like. It's so funny to me because at that time, everyone probably knows of Anthony Bourdain, and he wrote the book Kitchen Confidential. And the Kitchen Confidential book that like about every cook who came through my kitchen at least, or kitchens, for like 6 years, that was like one of the 3 books you had to have. Like it was just super crude, just super instructive. And the whole book is like, if you guys haven't read it, it's like, for the love of God, please don't do this. This is like such a bad, like it's terrible. Don't do it. And all the kids are sort of like, oh yeah, well then that means I have to do it. And it was that attitude.
Challenge.
Yeah.
I think too. I mean, and it's a double-edged sword, but food TV had a lot.
I was just gonna say that.
It had a lot to do with the resurgence of the awareness, getting the industry and the passion for cooking out there, the interest in cooking out there. When I say it's a double-edged sword, it also, because you and Paul, they'll both attest to this. You got kids that go to culinary school and maybe spend a year there, or maybe they spend a couple years there, get out, but they think they're going to have a TV show and a book, right out. They don't want to pay the dues.
Right.
So you got both ways.
You do.
But you got a ton more of exposure than there ever was. I mean, when I was growing up, you watched French Chef, you watched Galloping Gourmet, you
Julia
watched
Child.
Martin Yan, Yan Can Cook, the Great Chef series.
Oh, the
that
Great
was
Chef
a big.
series is the
That
best.
hooked me. That was the best.
The best.
The great chefs of the
yeah.
West, the great chefs
the
of the
best.
East, the Midwest. That was the best show.
That
Back
probably
when-
got me into cooking, honestly, more than anything
Me
else.
too.
I love that
Yeah.
show.
Yeah. That was huge. But then, now the younger, after we were already up and coming, they got exposed a lot more. There's just much more exposure.
How do you guys, as leaders, handle that double-edged sword? And that it's awesome that there is this passion for food because there's so much exposure to cooking on TV now than there used to be. But also, a bunch of people are going to culinary school and they're thinking, someday I'm gonna be on Top Chef. I'm gonna go beat Bobby Flay. I'm gonna, get my restaurant highlighted on diners, drive-ins, and dives. Like the aspiration isn't just I want to serve food; it's I want to be a celebrity. How do you kind of balance those two things as a leader and not crush the person's spirit, but also be like, hey man, you're not. If you want to be a celebrity, you better work your butt off right now and do what I want you to do. Like, how do you balance that?
Well, it's a good thing we have such a culture of hard work and dedication and delayed gratification. That,
Dan,
Exactly, though. That's the challenge.
Sometimes you just got to crush it.
Fair enough.
You ain't going to make it.
I mean, it is funny because I think we were talking
Or you
about,
tell them a story.
yeah, you tell them some story. But we were talking about when we, first got here about how, there was a period where I think, the industry's a little self-selecting, but it's a catch-all industry. Like it literally, you have people, from every aptitude imaginable, like the full range of just kind of like barely making it to like genius level types working shoulder to shoulder because it's good for anyone. You can be credentialed. You can be out of prison, like it's all of it, and so it really is about kind of your attitude, your mindset, it's the balancing act of dedication, but also kind of deference and humility, and and whatever. It's all this kind of stuff, and I think if there was a while when there was there was that kind of like Kitchen Confidential type crew that was like, yeah, that's what I want to be like a pirate, and then they all kind of got into their 30s and they're like, I can't live like this. This is crazy. And so, they get out of the industry, and then there's a new set of, kind of, 18, 19, 20-year-olds who come in and they're like, I got to watch my life work balance. I got to really kind of, and it's like, you're 20 years old. Like, what do you mean? Like, what's the life part of that?
What are you trying to balance?
Yeah. What do you actually balance? And that maybe took over the industry for a minute, and then I think we're maybe back to like, okay, let's do some stuff. Let's
Yeah, me and Paul were talking about that beforehand. It's coming.
Yeah,
It's coming back.
there's that kind of
Just the attitude and the willingness to learn and pay their dues, and just getting some really enthusiastic young cooks in.
Who have more of a long vision of it.
Yeah.
It's not like
Yeah.
I need to have it happen right away. It's like
The
I understand
entitlement is, I think, lessening.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's less of the myth. I think the myth, there was that, I think because, you highlight like the celebrity and all this kind of attention, and I think there was this kind of misguided belief that, you can live this sort of, this kind of celebrity light lifestyle as, for a lot of cooks. And of course it's not that at all, like at all. Even for them, it's not like that. You know what I mean? Like, it just isn't that. And so it's just fraught with like financial ruin, personal catastrophe, just like it's fraught. And I think we went from that to like the reality that as a trade, as a matter of just dollars and cents, if you are 18 years old and you're trying to make a life for yourself, you are not, it is financially very, very challenging to do that in a kitchen. Compared to becoming a welder or becoming an electrician or follow any other trade, and it's like you have real opportunity to live a normal, financially stable life. And in a kitchen, it's super duper hard. And that's just the reality, the economics of restaurants. They're not easy to do. They're super hard to make money in. And if you do make any money, you spend it like in an instant because everything's breaking all the time. Everything. Every day. So,
Yep.
yeah, that's what it's like. That's the reality of it. So we went from like the
It's
gossamer
not your body that's
to like,
breaking.
yeah, right.
It's equipment.
Like you lift 50 pound tubs of like, or I guess 35 pounds of like oil into a fryer every day. And you try to like empty that fryer and not have like it spill over and burn your feet to blisters. And you tried it like every day, not have like, you're stinking of garlic and like it's not a glamorous job. So that's, I think, the tension between the sort of fantasy of what that life was like and the reality of what the life was like created maybe a moment where people were sort of misunderstanding what was at stake. And now people are more back to kind of like, okay, if I want to do this seriously, this is how I'm going to have to do it, if I had to guess.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about the past. We've talked a good deal about the present. I want to end on the future. When you guys look at the future of Omaha's dining scene, what do you see?
Well, okay, I'm going to jump in here again. So, because what's interesting to me is in order for it to work, for restaurants to work, they obviously have to make financial sense. And so you have to be able to open a restaurant in a way that doesn't like prohibit you from being interesting and creative right out the gates. So by saying that, you need to find restaurant spaces that are the right size. Because I think part of the dilemma is that you have like new spaces. All these developers are around town kind of trying to recruit restaurants. And they're like, man, I've got a 7,500 foot pad or 700 square foot pad. You're like 7,500 square feet, like at, $50 a square foot or whatever. You're like, you do the quick math and you're like, yeah, not in 100 years could you pay that off. Like it's just financially inconceivable that you could do that as an independent. So the idea of keeping creative people involved and invested, the sous chefs and the line cooks that you see now around town that are like doing cool stuff, like how do you make it accessible to them? Well, it starts by having smaller spaces and maybe off the beaten path locations, and people like yourself and other writers and presenters kind of eager about discussing, and discovering these new places. That's what it takes. The talent is there, and the access to product is there. Mm-hmm. It's just, I think, the rest of the ecosystem. I feel fairly confident that with a little bit of coercion, that's bound to happen. Mm-hmm. So that's my idea. That's my sort of view of it.
What do you guys think? What do you see in the future for Omaha restaurants, food in general?
I think the future is bright. Like Paul said, things have to make sense. And financial sense, for things to keep going and evolving and getting stronger and all that good stuff, which, we don't have a whole lot of control over and stuff. But like you said, the talent is there. I think the creativity's, there. I mean, that goes along with the talent. So, I mean, I think it's bright. I mean, the future's bright for Omaha dining scene. I don't see it regressing really because it's came so far with every aspect. I mean, in ethnic cuisines across the board. I mean, we've got some great ethnic cuisines here in town. We've got some great pizza places. I mean, there's people making pizzas here that are phenomenal. You've been out of town. You've dined. You compare them to them. They're.
I'll put Virtuoso up with anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
but it's different styles too.
Different styles.
Really cool. So, like,
different
as
styles.
a subject, pizza's so cool because you've got a whole array of different people.
Exactly.
And you know what's gone? What I'm so happy about is that when pizza was like top of mind, it was like there could only be one pizza place in Omaha.
Yeah.
The best.
Yeah.
Give me the best. It's like, well, what are you talking about? Like, these are different styles of pizza. How do you compare them?
How are you comparing a Detroit to a Neapolitan?
like,
it's like an orange and a grape.
Now when people ask me, I'm like, what style?
Yeah.
Totally.
What do you like? Because, in New York style, I'm going to tell you Virtuoso. Mm-hmm. And, in the, like you said, Detroit style, and then the Neapolitan style, there's what kind of dough do you like? There's people fermenting doughs for longer than others. Mm-hmm. You got sourdough. Mm-hmm. You got, all this. But with also, that.
And it's, I want this kind of thing on a Tuesday. I want this kind of thing on a Wednesday, and like every day is a little different. You got something for each day. So I love the fact that you can have that with pizza, and I'm hopeful that can translate to other kinds of things too, that it's really just about exploring what people are doing with it, and if they're really serious about it, man, like let's explore that, I think,
Well, to wrap things up here, I kind of went through, Glenn. I was thinking about this, and I just went through my website. So this is not like an extensive list by any means, but Nebraska/Omaha, we've got awesome places for ramen, Latin American food, sushi, Indian, Mediterranean, Japanese, Korean, Greek, Chinese, African. That's just scratching the surface. I don't think those concepts are able to get off the ground 15 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago. And I just want to thank you guys because you guys were part of the movement that had the boldness to stay here and to push this scene forward and to say, you know what? No, it's not just going to be the same burger or the same salmon recipe. Like, we're going to try and do things differently. I thank you for staking your stake in the ground and just saying, we're going to try something different. We're going to push this thing forward and we're going to make it better. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast tonight and sharing all this knowledge. I could talk to you guys forever and ever. I got to respect your time. But this was just so much fun, and I'm so grateful. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Omaha, as always, thanks for eating with us.